Hey everybody, welcome to Lawrence Gardens. I'm Miss Kate, and we're here in the Arboretum, and Christine is going to join us today, our Director of Education, and she's going to be talking about some of the spring birds that you see in your backyards and front yards. So go ahead and take it away.
Awesome, thank you. Again, I'm Christine, Director of Education at Lawrence Gardens. I'm here to talk to you about birds today. And we're going to talk about two different types of birds. We're going to talk about those songbirds that you see in your yard, and then we're going to talk about those birds of prey that sometimes you see up on the telephone wires or out in the country on those fence posts. So let's start with those songbirds that we have with us today. We'll start out with our cardinal. A lot of times with these birds, you'll see that their field markings or their coloration tells a little bit about their name. So our cardinal here is cardinal in color. It's got a very pretty call to it. It's one that sets up territory, so you'll hear those male birds calling a lot of times in the early morning to set up their home range so that all the other birds know that that's their spot. The next bird that we'll talk about is our western meadowlark. It is the state bird of Nebraska. Not one that you would find in your yards, but if you go out to visit a prairie or some tall grass areas, that's where you would find this bird. Again, it is the state bird of Nebraska. It's a little bit different than our other songbirds in that it nests on the ground. Our next bird here is the black-capped chickadee, another one that you'll see at your feeders in your yard. It does migrate through the area, and right now is spring migration, so a great time to go out, put feeders out, put water out, and look for those birds. Another bird that we have with us here is the downy woodpecker. I know I see these all the time in my backyard at our suet feeder, so suet is another option that you can put out in your yard. The one here on the other side of our feeder is our red-winged blackbird. This bird likes to nest around wetland areas, and so if you have a pond in your neighborhood or a lake, good place to go and look for these red-winged blackbirds. Again, they are territorial, so you'll hear them calling as you walk up to that pond. If we move on to our other group of birds, those birds of prey, we've got two very common birds of prey here for Nebraska. Our red-tailed hawk, most common one, and then our great horned owl. Birds of prey are in a different class than our songbirds. They're the birds that like to catch their prey or their food live and carry it off to eat it. So these are the birds that are really helpful in our farm fields and around our houses. I know I'd much rather have a great horned owl or a red-tailed hawk around my house than I would like to have mice around my house. So they are nature's cleaner-uppers, and they help keep things, our food stores, safe, and our houses, keep those rodents out of our houses and our neighborhoods. We are in the middle of spring migration, so it's a great time to put out those bird feeders and those bird baths. It's also a great time to go for a walk. Get out into your neighborhoods and look for those bird nests up in the trees. Before the leaves all come out and cover them up and hide them, it's a great time to look for bird nests in trees. Other things that you can look for is evidence of birds, bird feathers. One thing to remember though is birds are protected by law, so you are not allowed to keep any feathers or nests. So anything that you find, make sure that you put it back where you found it. Other things that you can do this time of year is to build a bird feeder or a bird house and get those out in your yard so that those migrants coming back have a place to nest.
Christine had mentioned that the markings on birds oftentimes denotes where the markings are in the colors that they are. So for example, our cardinal is a cardinal color, such as the red cardinal here. We also have the red-winged blackbird, which you can see on its wings. It's appropriately named because it's got these little red stripes on it. Other animals, other birds, such as like a blue jay, obviously that's blue in color. A ruby-throated hummingbird has a ruby throat to it. So these characteristics are oftentimes the actual names of these birds. So we have a little activity for you. You are going to get a blank bird, and your job is to come up with a fun title and color it appropriately. So, for example, I came up with a bird on my own. And I called it the yellow-footed flying baseball because yellow is my favorite color and baseball is my favorite sport. So it's obviously got yellow feet, thus the name yellow-footed, and it's a flying baseball. So the body itself is a baseball. It's got baseball in its feathers and its body characteristics, thus the name yellow-footed flying baseball. So you can go ahead and find this information and download it with the video that you've just seen. And that's all we have for you today. Hopefully you can get outside in your neighborhoods and in your backyards and experience some of the items that we've talked about today. Thanks.